Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if the person destroying you the most right now is someone you love deeply? What if the wounds you are carrying have no bruises, no scars, no visible marks, but they are eating you alive from the inside? What if you have been telling yourself for months, maybe even years, that everything is fine, that you are just too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding, when in reality, something very dark has been happening to you inside a relationship that was supposed to feel like home? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might be the most important conversation you have ever had. Not with me, but with yourself. We talk a lot about love. We talk about butterflies and chemistry and connection. We write songs about it. We build our entire lives around finding it and keeping it. But there is a side of love that almost nobody talks about honestly. The side where love becomes a weapon. The side where the person who says "I love you" every single night is also the person slowly dismantling who you are. This is the psychology of emotional abuse in romantic relationships. And I want to be very clear from the very beginning. Emotional abuse is real, it is serious, and it leaves damage that can take years, sometimes decades, to fully understand and heal from. So let us go deep. Let us talk about what it actually is, how it works inside the human mind, why smart and strong people fall into it, why they stay, and what happens to a person psychologically when love turns into a battlefield, what emotional abuse actually is. First, let us define what we are talking about, because one of the most dangerous things about emotional abuse is that it is extraordinarily hard to name. Emotional abuse is a pattern of behavior within a relationship designed to control, manipulate, diminish, or punish another person through psychological means rather than physical force. Notice the word pattern. That is crucial. We are not talking about one bad argument. We are not talking about a partner having a terrible day and saying something harsh. We are talking about repeated, consistent behavior that over time reshapes how a person sees themselves and the world around them. Emotional abuse includes things like constant criticism dressed up as honesty. It includes gaslighting, which is when someone makes you question your own memory, your own perception, your own sanity. It includes silent treatment used as punishment. It includes humiliation in public or in private. It includes jealousy framed as love. It includes isolation from friends and family. It includes threats, guilt-tripping, and manipulation so refined that the person experiencing it often cannot even see it happening. The reason it is so difficult to recognize is because it almost never starts in an obvious way. Nobody falls in love with someone who treats them terribly from day one. The abuse builds gradually, layer by layer, like paint being applied to a wall. And by the time you notice the wall has changed color, you have been living inside it so long that you have forgotten what the original color even looked like. The psychology behind the abuser. Now let us talk about why someone does this. Because understanding the psychology of the person inflicting emotional abuse is important, not to excuse the behavior, but to see it clearly for what it is. Emotionally abusive people are almost always operating from a place of deep fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of inadequacy, fear of losing control. Research in psychology consistently shows that people who emotionally abuse their partners frequently struggle with what psychologists call insecure attachment styles, particularly anxious or disorganized attachment, which were formed in childhood environments where love was conditional, unpredictable, or painful. When a person grows up never knowing whether love is safe, they develop strategies to manage the terror of intimacy. For some people, that strategy becomes control. If I can control my partner, their behavior, their social life, their self-esteem, their sense of reality, then I can eliminate my fear of losing them. It is a deeply dysfunctional logic, but it is logic nonetheless. Many emotionally abusive people also exhibit traits of narcissism, not always full narcissistic personality disorder, but a narcissistic style that prioritizes their own emotional needs so completely that their partner's inner world becomes essentially invisible to them. They genuinely struggle to empathize. They genuinely believe that their reactions are always justified. They genuinely see their partner's pain as an inconvenience or a manipulation, rather than as something real and worth attending to. This is why trying to explain your hurt to an emotionally abusive partner so often leads nowhere. They are not capable of receiving that information in the way a healthy partner would. The psychology of the person being abused. Here is where things get really important, and where I need you to listen without judgment, especially if you are recognizing yourself in this conversation. One of the most common questions people ask when they learn about emotional abuse is this: why would anyone stay? And the answer to that question requires genuine psychological understanding, not judgment. First, let us talk about something called trauma bonding. Trauma bonding is a psychological phenomenon that occurs when a person develops a powerful emotional attachment to someone who alternately hurts them and shows them love. The cycle typically looks like this. Tension builds, an abusive episode occurs, then comes the reconciliation phase, sometimes called the honeymoon phase, where the abusive partner becomes loving, apologetic, and wonderful again. This cycle, tension, explosion, affection, tension, explosion, affection, activates the brain's reward system in ways that are genuinely similar to addiction. When you experience intermittent reinforcement, which means you receive love and warmth unpredictably rather than consistently, your brain becomes obsessively focused on earning that reward. The same way a slot machine is more compelling than a vending machine, a relationship with unpredictable love creates a psychological pull that is almost impossible to break through sheer willpower alone. Second, emotional abuse systematically destroys self-esteem. And when your self-esteem is destroyed, the very tool you need to evaluate the relationship clearly, your own sense of worth, has been taken from you. You begin to believe that you are difficult, that you are the problem, that nobody else would want you, that you are lucky to have this person at all. These are not thoughts you arrived at naturally. These are thoughts that were planted in you, tended carefully, and cultivated over time by someone who needed you to believe them. Third, there is something psychologists call cognitive dissonance. When you love someone, and that same person hurts you, your brain experiences an unbearable conflict. Loving a bad person feels like it makes you foolish, so instead, your brain protects you by finding reasons the person is not actually bad. You minimize the incidents. You rationalize the behavior. You focus on the good moments and reframe the bad ones. This is not weakness. This is your mind trying desperately to protect you from a painful truth that feels too enormous to face. The long-term psychological damage. Let us talk about what emotional abuse does to a person over time, because this is something that deserves to be said plainly and without softening. People who experience prolonged emotional abuse frequently develop symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. They experience hypervigilance, a constant state of alertness, always watching for the next eruption, always reading the room, always trying to manage the emotional temperature of the environment before something goes wrong. This hypervigilance does not turn off when the relationship ends. It follows people into new relationships, into workplaces, into friendships. Anxiety and depression are extraordinarily common among survivors of emotional abuse. The constant criticism, the unpredictability, the feeling of never being enough, these experiences wire the nervous system into a state of chronic stress. The body holds that stress even when the mind tries to move on. Survivors often struggle with what is called complex trauma, a form of trauma that develops not from a single catastrophic event, but from prolonged, repeated exposure to distressing experiences within close relationships. Complex trauma affects identity, memory, emotional regulation, and the ability to trust. It changes how a person relates to themselves and to other people, sometimes for years after leaving the relationship. And perhaps most painfully, emotional abuse distorts a person's understanding of love itself. When you have been conditioned to associate love with pain, with unpredictability, with earning and proving and walking on eggshells, then love starts to feel like something you have to survive rather than something you deserve to receive freely. Why it is so hard to leave. I want to address this directly because there is still so much misunderstanding about it. Leaving an emotionally abusive relationship is not simple. It is not a matter of just deciding to have more self-respect and walking out the door. By the time a person recognizes the full extent of what has been happening to them, they are typically dealing with a completely dismantled sense of self, possible financial dependence, social isolation engineered by the abuser, and a nervous system that has been trained to treat the relationship as the only source of safety, even when that relationship is the primary source of danger. Statistically, research shows that people leave abusive relationships an average of 7 times before leaving for good. 7 times. That is not weakness. That is a person fighting an enormously complex psychological battle with limited resources, often no outside support, and a brain that has been rewired through trauma to keep returning to what is familiar. If someone you love is in an emotionally abusive relationship and you cannot understand why they stay, the most helpful thing you can do is stay present, stay non-judgmental, and remind them consistently that they are worthy of love that does not hurt. The path toward healing. Healing from emotional abuse is possible. I want to say that clearly because it needs to be said. But healing requires something that our culture does not always make easy. It requires time, genuine support, and the willingness to rebuild a relationship with yourself from the ground up. Many survivors find that therapy, particularly approaches like EMDR, cognitive behavioral therapy, or somatic therapy, helps them process the trauma stored in both the mind and the body. Connection with safe people, friends, family, support communities is also essential, because isolation is both a tool of abuse and a wound that needs to be healed through genuine human warmth. One of the most important parts of recovery is learning to trust your own perceptions again. Emotional abuse teaches you to doubt yourself. Healing teaches you to come home to yourself, to believe what you saw, to trust what you felt, to know that your emotions are valid information, not character flaws. And perhaps most profoundly, healing involves reconditioning your understanding of what love is supposed to feel like. Love that is real and healthy is not thrilling because it is painful. It is not profound because it is confusing. Real love feels like safety. It feels like being seen. It feels like someone wanting the fullest, most authentic version of you, not the smallest, most manageable version of you. If any part of this conversation has landed somewhere real inside you, whether you are in the middle of this right now, whether you are healing from it, or whether you love someone who is going through it, I want you to hold on to this thought as you carry on with your day. The fact that you are here, listening, seeking understanding, is itself an act of courage. The mind that is asking questions is a mind that has not given up on itself. And that matters more than you know. Emotional abuse thrives in silence. It survives on confusion. It depends on isolation. The moment you start naming it, talking about it, understanding it, you take away some of its power. You were not built to survive love. You were built to experience it. There is a difference. And knowing that difference, truly, deeply knowing it, is where everything begins to change. Take care of yourself and keep asking the hard questions.